welcome. It's Chris from ChristopherHole.com. Welcome to this whiteboard presentation where we're going to be overviewing the healing process post-injury. We're going to focus on three of the phases, the inflammatory phase, the repair phase, and the remodeling phase. So we've got 3 slides, one for each, where we'll sort of put a little bit more detail down. It won't be a huge amount of detail, but it'll be enough to give you an understanding of the process, so you can go away and be able to rehabilitate that much better, because I'm a firm believer in the better we know the processes of the human body, the better we know how to act and function within our rehabilitation and within our exercise and training as a whole. So we'll explore those, but if you do want to go and sort of investigate a little bit more deeply, take some of these ideas that I'm putting forward in this presentation and obviously go and investigate it in journals, books, Google, articles, whatever you need to do. Before we get into the main bulk of the presentation, as I always do, just quickly mention my social media channels, which are Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. On Twitter it's at Christopher Hole, Facebook is Christopher Hole Training, and Instagram is Christopher Hole. So please do come along, like and follow, like, share anything that's up, comment on it, ask questions. I'm more than happy to answer questions that you might have on my Facebook page or via Twitter or Instagram, whichever's best for you. Alternatively, do come to the website, which is christopherhole.com/join, and you can sign up to our monthly newsletter. There again, it's all video content, so we try and cover as much as we can under the umbrella of health and fitness. So again, if you've got questions on that, please do ask them. It's all video content. There are some exclusive videos on there that we don't share on social media, so you do get something extra. But yes, there are the newsletter and my social channels that you can follow along this education and this journey with me. So getting into the first slide, which is the inflammatory phase. So the start of the healing process is essentially we bleed first, so it might be an external bleed if we've cut ourselves, or it might be a sort of like a minor internal bleed like bruising, but that will happen first. Then it comes on to inflammation, then repair, then remodel. And as you can see from the diagram, they do overlap. It's not a black and white, one starts and then it ends and then the next one begins. Once one process has sort of gone through its high phase, if you will, or a lot of workings, then it will start to slow down and the other one will start to sort of build itself into the process. So it's quite a dynamic process, and obviously the better we act within that process, the quicker it will happen. If we don't do certain things, it will take longer. If we do certain things, it will be shorter. So we'll explore those as we go through as well. So with regards to the inflammatory phase, it's the first phase, and it takes up to sort of 72 hours, possibly a little bit longer, depending on how we manage ourselves. But there are sort of 3 signs of inflammation, and they're characterized from what is described as the cardinal signs of inflammation. One being pain due to chemicals that are released, and here are some of them up here. You've got swelling or edema, which is an influx of fluid into the damaged area. So that'll be water, that'll be blood, and that'll be certain degrees of like white blood cells as well, so on and so forth. And then you have the redness due to the vasodilation, which is the blood coming to the affected area. So vasodilation is just where the vessels dilate to allow that more blood to the affected area. So you get an influx of fluids and blood into that area. Obviously we get the pain to let us know there's a problem. So that's the inflammatory phase. Now as we progress into that, it will obviously reduce itself, but initially it could be quite painful. There will be a lot of edema and a lot of vasodilation to start with, but then as we go in, it will start to regress itself, as we'll explore in the next slide, which is repair phase. Now we have the initial up to 3 weeks as we've got here, and then we've got 6 weeks to several months. Now when we get to 6 weeks and several months, then it starts to overlap into remodeling. So the first up to 3 weeks, we have an elimination of debris. Now, I would liken that to like an exhaust fume, if you will. So you get all that new blood, all that new fluid, all of those white blood cells going into that area. And what it will do initially is it will clear any rubbish out the way, which is the elimination of debris. So first of all, it will eliminate that and just clean the area up. What it will then do is start to regenerate the cells. they'll start to repair themselves and become what they were before. Then you get a production of fibroblasts, which is the connective tissue that sort of holds it all together, if you will. So you get what's known as the extracellular matrix, which is the fibroblasts and the cells becoming a matrix, but also sort of becoming the new structure, if you will. Then you get the collagen and other protein fibers are laid down in a haphazard manner. So as an initial, to get the job done, it will just lay it down in that haphazard manner, because we will be, at this stage, we will be resting, or there will be more rest than activity, if you will. So if it's a sprained ankle, you won't be running on that ankle, you will be limping, you will be keeping your weight off it, so on and so forth. But as we move into 6 weeks to several months, we would then start to think about applied pressure, which would be like a manual therapy and movement. Yes, we will be moving on it in up to 3 weeks. That doesn't mean we rest for 3 weeks. Obviously, it will depend on the injury, and there will be some specifics that will determine that. We will be moving it to a degree, but there will be limitations to how much we can and how much we want to move it in that initial phase. But as we start to move into the end of the repair phase and the beginnings of the remodeling phase, we then want to start thinking about applied pressure, which will come in the form of manual therapy like massage or sports massage or deep tissue massage. Essentially, they're all the same thing, but we put different labels on them. So what this does, the protein fibers and scar tissue orientate themselves in the direction in which pressure is applied. Now, that will be done, if you don't go and see a manual therapist, that will be done based on the movement that you do. So if you are constantly, not that you necessarily will only be walking upstairs, but if you are walking upstairs in that sort of forward movement, then the tissues or the protein fibers will sort of orientate themselves in that straight up and down way, if you will. But if you're stepping forward, stepping to the side, if you're rotating, so on and so forth, then the tissues will orientate themselves in all three of those and build a much, let's just say, stronger tissue. Obviously, the most dominant one will be that sort of forwards and backwards, because that's the direction that we're moving in most of the time. But we do want to be able to have all three, because our body does move in all three, and it doesn't want to be weak in just two of them. It wants to be strong in all three of them, if that makes sense. So it may take months to fully mature and achieve full strength, which we know if we've done training and we've rehabilitated from an injury, we'll start off lighter and we'll sort of build back into getting ourselves back to where we were before. So the final phase is the remodeling phase, which we've sort of touched on already, which is the final phase and occurs once the wound is closed. So this phase involves remodeling of collagen from type 3 to type 1, and then you get a cellular activity reduces and the number of blood vessels in the wounded area regress and decrease. So what that's basically saying is the inflammation phase is basically regressing itself, and now this remodeling phase and, let's just say, normal tissue phase in inverted commas is starting to sort of come back, if you will. Now obviously the more normal the tissue, again in inverted commas, depends on how well we repair and how well we remodel, and that might mean massaging, stretching and moving. So as we've mentioned, we have the remodeling phase where the tissues start to orientate themselves. This is where the massage comes in, because the direction of the massage will help orientate those tissues. The direction of the stretch will help orientate the tissues, and also the direction of the movement will help orientate those tissues. So as we start in that remodeling phase, we will regress our training right back. It will be more focused on rehabilitation and less focused on exercise, but then it will start moving away from, say, massage and stretching and more into movement. So you can start to see we're working on a continuum, like in that first diagram, as we move into the remodeling phase, which applies to our manual therapy, which be massage, and our training, be it movement and exercise. So as we get to the end of that, we get to do more of the movement. But what we have to remember is we have to remember to move in all different directions so we can remodel and restructure the tissues in all those different directions like our muscle wants. Obviously, the dominant direction of that muscle is where we're going to want to dominate our movement, but we do want all three if that starts to make sense. So that's the overview of the healing process. Hopefully it's given you a better idea as to how and why we go about rehabilitation in certain ways. Obviously there are more specifics to it because there will be specifics to certain injuries, specifics to certain types of people, so on and so forth. So yes, there are specifics, but as a general rule, that's the type of direction that we would take our rehabilitation from manual therapy and massage into stretching and into movement once we've gone through the necessary phases of resting and repairing. So many thanks for watching. My name is Chris from ChristopherHole.com. Again, please do come along to social media or go along to the website ChristopherHole.com/join, sign up, like, follow. It'd be great to see you there. But many thanks for watching this video. I will speak to you in the next one.